Hey there, peeps. When I started my YouTube channel around 11 years ago, I had no intentions in mind. And after going back in retrospect and trying to analyze my intentions when I did start it, it would be two things. Number one, to educate other people on things that I have found useful in life, whether that be one of my earliest videos of showing how a Krieg jig works for drilling pocket holes, some of my carpentry videos, or my prepping videos where I wanted to talk about being prepared for any type of a disaster, all the way into my spiritual phase where, quote, spiritual phase, I've always been a spirit-oriented person, but not in the sense of some sort of a bullshit illusion that's put over that. Some sort of a way to define it, some Sadhguru type, this is the way you live life and this is the way you're going to be happy. I don't buy into any of that bullshit. But when I did start my channel, I was about, I'm 46 now. So I guess I was 35. And at 35 years old, I thought I had a lot of stuff figured out. I started to learn that I don't. I mean, it's the Dunning-Kruger effect, in a way. And I've always been aware of this. I've always been aware and humble as to what I know, but also not arrogant, but confident in what I do know. And some of the things I don't know have to do with world issues, what's going on in economics or another country. Those things are irrelevant to my daily life, for the most part. What really matters is, how do I handle myself? What truths do I know that I can share with other people, that they can share with other people, in order to live a better life? That's complicated. Many of the people, let's say a subscriber right now who's watching my channel who's, say, 16 years old, would have been 5 years old when I started my channel. There are new generations coming up who are seeing things in a different light. This brings me to a discussion about, first off, the millennial, the boomer bullshit. And there are a lot of things I want to talk about here, so I'm going to cover this, and I'm hopefully going to keep it in a coherent, functional discussion to where I can actually convey my thoughts without feeling like I'm jumping around too much. But there's a lot I want to cover. The millennials that get a lot of flack. And I read this article yesterday that really it just made me laugh. It was Gen Z complaining to millennials for not being woke enough, or because of their skinny tight jeans, or because they don't have a grasp on certain concepts that the new generations believe they have a grasp on. This is exactly and absolutely no different from the 60s when people were out protesting and taking acid and hanging out on Haight-Ashbury and saying, man, we got to change the world. There's a certain arrogance you have when you're young that you can mold the world to what you think it should be. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. And I want to make it clear that I'm not saying that young people shouldn't be idealists, because I was, and I still am to an extent. But to be an idealist, you have to also learn how to be a realist, meaning that you see the world as it is. And that doesn't come until you get older. You cannot gain certain wisdom until you gain age. And I know a lot of people would disagree with that by saying, well, no, that's only the people who haven't chosen to educate themselves more on the world around them when they were younger. In other words, there are a lot of immature 60-year-olds, and there are a lot of highly mature 20-year-olds. But what we have to define here is, what does mature mean? What does it mean to be mature, or to be, aware, or a functioning member of society, right? We live in an illusion that we understand as humans what is important to being a human. There are people who want to give advice to everyone else on how they should live their lives. There are people who will cancel someone, quote, cancel, on Twitter because they made a comment that they didn't like. We are living in a very, a time of fragile minds. And that's where I'm coming from on this video, and the main component of this. I'm from Gen X. Gen X was often thought of as kind of the forgotten generation, the modern forgotten generation. There's also the pre-baby boomers. But generations as a term, as millennials, Gen X, Gen Y, don't really mean much. But they do in the sense that we grow up in certain times where we're exposed to certain things, and that molds us for our future. So we have kids, teenagers out there, protesting in the streets because they want to change this or change that. There's nothing new about that. It's just a matter of what we are protesting and what we are against. No longer are people marching in the streets opposed to like the Vietnam War or American, involvement in overseas and killing other people. It's more, no, we want equality and we want freedom and we want people to stop being racist and stop being transphobes and stop being homophobes. This discussion, as soon as I bring that up, is going to piss people off, and that's just the way it is. But it shouldn't. And if it does piss you off that I'm talking about this and making light of the situation, then you need to fucking grow up and get over yourself. Because many of us are sick and tired of hearing others tell people how they should feel and how they should think. That's fine. Everybody's got their opinion. But when you tell people what their intentions are based on what they said and what you think they meant, when you cancel people because you misinterpret what they said in a discussion, like happens with Joe Rogan or probably Russell Brand today, we are living in a weird time. Russell Brand, for example, he's 46. He's my age. He was born actually like 2 or 3 months before me. So we are both Gen X. We both grew up in the same bullshit. We both had different lives. We both went through the same cultural issues, but with different perspectives on things. But ultimately, Russell Brand right now is probably, and this is why I bring it up, the most reliable source for, I guess, information regarding our loss of freedoms on YouTube right now. Russell Brand, a guy who was what a lot of people had their opinions of Russell Brand. I'm not even going to give mine because I was never interested. I didn't watch any of his movies. I just knew that how he was portrayed as this junkie who didn't take care of himself and didn't give a shit and had no, care for society's ways. I respect that. I do. Because it's always the odd man out that really brings forth, I guess, the true nature of being a human, which is to acknowledge ourselves, to be able to be wild, to be crazy, to go out and have fun, to not try to take ourselves too seriously. Because when people say, oh, well, I grew up, or people should grow up, you have to ask yourself, what does that mean? Like I said, there are people who are 60 years old who are totally immature, and people who are 30 who act very mature. But really, what does any of that matter? If you take a 30-year-old who acts very mature, he's very responsible and business-oriented, then you've got a 60-year-old who just likes to have fun and enjoy their life. You might call that 60-year-old irresponsible. But really, is it? What does it really mean to be a human? What does it mean to enjoy our lives and to do what we want to do? I'm so sick and tired of hearing people tell others how they should live. And I thought that in today's world, we would actually get to the point where we'd just be able to put up a big middle finger and say, fuck you, I feel the way I feel, fuck off. And generally we do that, but why are people so afraid to even talk about some of the topics that are important? Like trans people in sports. Like a man who identifies as a female who decides, I'm going to play basketball with this team now, or join track, or whatever it might be, knowing that they were born as a man, that they had that advantage of building more muscle, having a larger skeleton or skeletal system. And now we're at a time where you can't even talk about that. I will talk about that because I totally don't give a shit. If a person wants to say that a trans person in sports doesn't have an advantage, I'm just going to call bullshit on it. Just like if a person says if you say a certain word, even if it's taken out of context, you're a racist or you're a hater. None of us are buying into that anymore. My generation doesn't give a fuck. And that's the point I want to make here. We don't care what other people think and what other people say if we know that our intentions were good. And when I say we, I guess I don't mean my generation so much as people who think the same way I do in regards to personal opinions, to really looking at data, looking at science, understanding the world around us, a lot of people have just copped out. They have no interest in that. They want to believe what they want to believe, and to me, it's no different than religion. So the modern, quote, woke culture, if you want to call it that, is like a religion. Just like conservatism, just like liberalism, these ideas that people feel I have to follow and I have to be with my group. And this gets to the point here. Groups don't mean shit. There's an old saying by Groucho Marx, I believe it was Groucho, who said, I would never be a member of any group who, what was it? I would never join any group who would have me as a member. I've thought about that for a couple decades now. It always comes up. I think, it really lays it out there that anytime you form a group, you end up separating yourself from other people. And this is why, as I'm talking about different generations, I'm not pointing the finger, because it's not millennials. It's not the boomers. There were boomers out there who were protesting against the war, and there were boomers who were making a shitload of profit during the war. Just like today, there are millennials who are out protesting for human rights, and there are millennials who work for companies who completely annihilate human rights for profit. Nothing has really changed. When you get right down to it, nothing has changed as far as how we actually operate as a species. And that, my friends, is crucial, I think. We have a weird world now with gurus and teachers and life coaches and financial advisors and astrologers and psychologists and psychiatrists and actors, and then influencers. Wanted to point this out while I'm on the topic here of talking about generational differences and changes, that back with Gen X, the reason why I'm so just whatever about the modern generations is we had a chance in the 80s to turn off the TV when commercials came on, right? We were forced to watch whatever was on TV, okay? We'd watch our cartoons or our nightly shows, but if you missed your show, you waited a week to watch it again, or a month or a year, whatever it might be for reruns. You basically were forced to watch whatever was available. And because of that, advertising became a major component of the 80s and 90s. We got really, really sick of it and thought, man, won't that be nice when the internet becomes so available that people can finally escape that bullshit? Now we have influencers, and I'm pointing this out to say that to be an influencer is complete garbage. It's not a career. Sure, you can make money off of it. Sure, you can get people to believe what you say and therefore say, I use this shampoo or I use this product, and make a lot of money off of it. And the more views, the more money, the more engagement. It just keeps going like that. But instead of being sold to by the corporations, we have the middlemen now, advertisers, the Jeffree Stars of the world, people trying to sell products rather than a real content. And this brings me to content creators. I'm not a YouTuber. I am not a content creator. I'm a philosopher, and I talk about things that are important to me. And if people want to engage with that, they can. If I was a content creator, then I'd be talking about controversial topics all the time, or something that's going to get a lot of engagement or views, or Pokemon, or you name it. It's people find a niche, but that niche is often surface bullshit. And this is why I feel that people aren't talking about the important issues. There's fake gurus out there. There's a lot of neoliberal bullshit and a lot of hustle culture. And hustle culture to me is probably one of the most pathetic aspects of our modern society. I read an article the other day that kind of opened up that Pandora's box, if you will. It said, whatever happened to the slackers? Whatever happened to our reverence for people who could just chill and hang out with their friends and enjoy their time? Like, Clerks, or some of these movies back, like Breakfast Club, things like that, where we kind of idolized getting away from the rat race, and now a lot of people have just made that the norm. Like, well, you got to get in there. You got to get exposure. You got to get on Instagram. You've got to get everybody to see your shit. And I just don't buy into it. It's a lot of passing fads that come and go, and they come a lot faster than they used to in the past. But I'm not interested in selling out who I am to make a profit. And I see this a lot in the younger generations because they haven't exposed themselves to enough advertising to know how bad it really is. How you're selling shit to people they don't need. How really what matters is our connections to one another, but more importantly, and this is the main key here, our connections to our family and those around us. Because ultimately, society's opinions really don't matter. The average Joe you meet on the street who doesn't like how you're dressed, or the person on the internet who points out that, you're this way or you're that way or you're wrong about this or that, fuck them. You just got to let go of that bullshit. Especially if you want to be able to post anything on the internet, because there's always some idiot sitting behind his computer who has an opinion, and there will always be that person. It's just that it's a little easier to scream at each other now. So, at any rate, this was kind of a ramble, a general ramble. I didn't obviously focus on one topic. It's more of just how things are bullshit right now. How, especially the younger generation, their minds are so open and so much potential, but they're being... Went to pick up my son the other day at school. Half the kids are still wearing their masks, even though the mandate has been lifted. And it makes you wonder, why? So I was talking to him about that. It's like, well, a lot of people just like to hide away. A lot of people don't want to be seen. We've raised a whole generation to be fearful now. And I think that that's a travesty, personally. And it's something I've wrestled with for a long time. Being cautious in life and living a long, healthy life and taking care of everyone in society and making sure everyone's bubble wrapped, as opposed to taking chances and just living your fucking life. There are certain cautions you want to take, obviously, but you have to look at the science behind why you're taking that caution, and people aren't doing it. And this brings me to my final complaint here, which is information. Information has been weaponized from the beginning of time. Propaganda is a well-known technique from any government or even every family. People want to tell their kids, don't do this or this will happen, or, oh, you might go to hell, scaring, as a simple version of this. Don't do something bad or you might get in trouble. Even the idea of karma, which is complete bullshit in my opinion. I believed in this shit in the past. I did believe in karma, but I don't anymore. Because I've seen too many good people die and too many bad people live happy lives. And, it doesn't... It's a way for us to pretend and delude ourselves that if we just do A, B, and C, then we will be doing the right thing in our lives. And we aren't. We have to find that for ourselves. Whatever the right thing is for us as an individual is going to depend on what moves us. But ultimately what matters is the people in our immediate vicinity, our immediate environment, acknowledging that those people matter more than anything. We can still have our own time, and it doesn't mean that we have to just dote over everyone that we, is in our close family and friend group. It just means that we respect those around us. We treat them with, equal respect anyway. And that we don't acknowledge the bullshit around us of the other people that we don't know who are telling us how to live our lives or what to do. People who we don't understand their lives. We don't know how fucked up they are in their heads. It's this old saying that don't meet your heroes. I would like to change that and say, meet your heroes. Meet the people that you look up to and get to know them if you can. Because when you do, you'll realize that they're just as fucked up as you are. Nobody has the full picture. Nobody knows what the purpose of life is. People can give you shit like this, these little pamphlets. Who controls the world? And what is the key to happy family life? These, stupid fucking Jehovah's Witnesses that show up at my door pretending like they have the answers. You ask them a few questions and they get all riled up and angry. You just can't. The there's there's a happy balance to be there's a balance to being happy in life and being completely miserable. And a lot of people miss the mark. And I think all we can do is do our best to find that mark. Those are my thoughts for the day. Talk to you next time. Be well.